Let's begin.
Hey there, Scary Story Fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Has been a pretty exciting week for me, so I figured I'd make it a pretty exciting week for you, with the continuation of last week's story and the next chapter in my novel, Buried Secrets, Chapter 5. I found my childhood in the attic. I was not a child anymore. Years had passed since Heather had been found, and Jason had subsequently gone missing. Jason hadn't turned back up either, not like Heather did. Heather had been moved to an institution for mental health, about an hour and a half from where I lived. Therefore, my parents rarely were able to take me to visit. In fact, in the years since, they actually hadn't taken me once. Mom had promised a few times, but always canceled at the last minute, plans having changed or circumstances altered. But the end result was always the same, and seeing my friend from long ago, face to face, never came to fruition. However, I was 16 now, and had worked the previous summer at a stone quarry, saving up every last cent that I could to buy my first vehicle. Yeah, the thing was an absolute jalopy. I think the car had more rust than actual white painted body surface, and well over 200,000 miles on the engine when I had purchased it. But what can you expect from a 1984 Chevy Celebrity over 30 years old? One thing I can say, surprisingly, the car was really reliable. It took some begging and convincing, but I was finally allowed to drive back and forth to school. I'm pretty sure Dad would have offered, but the drive was pretty far, and there was no need now that I had my own car. Mostly, I thought my parents were just scared of letting me out of sight of authority figures, whether it be them or school officials. This type of pressure surely led to my feelings of no privacy, facilitating an increased sense of rebellion in the background. They wouldn't be able to control my every action for much longer. Now, I say Dad likely would have offered to drive me, because even though my mother didn't work or drive, Dad did. Well, he drove. But as the past years had progressed, my father worked less and less, until, at this point, most of his days were spent working on odd projects in and around the house. Renovating the bathroom, building decks. Dad said he was laid off due to lack of work, but he must have gotten the highest possible amount for unemployment at that time, because I never felt or sensed a lack of finances or prosperity. Because of this, I wasn't hesitant to ask for things of monetary value, even though maybe I should have been. Though when I asked my father for these things, such as a cool new video game or gas money, he'd make me work for it. It was one such instance, asking for $20 in gas to get back and forth to school, that led me to a weekend clean-out of our attic. Dad was now looking to renovate that space as well, and as such, boxes and random items had to be shifted to the other attic platform on the east side of the home, and the space cleaned. Mostly, it was me left alone to do the part by myself. I had spent hours up there, lugging old trash bags full of random Christmas decorations, winter clothing that was not currently in use, and every other item one could possibly conceive to find in an attic. But as the piles on either side of the cramped space began to dwindle, it revealed lost treasures buried under eons of old junk and sentimental items. I was nearly completely done, maybe 3 or 4 armloads away from having the space empty, when I lifted a box and spied something nostalgic underneath. It was my Masters of the Universe playsets and action figures, all set inside a see-through plastic tote, protected from a decade of time that threatened to fade the hues of all contained within, perfectly preserved just how I remembered them when I was 6. I set the box on the floor, just eyeing the tote without saying a word, and with breathless anticipation, I opened the lid and just began rifling through the items waiting inside. These toys brought back so many memories. The adventures I used to have with my friends, in our heads or not, were fun and exciting. We were happy kids who always believed we would be friends indefinitely. I put the action figure I held in my hand back in the box, my heart just a little heavier. Now, Jason was gone, and Heather wasn't even really Heather anymore. Yeah, she was alive, but she'd lost that childlike spark we all had back then. We all did, I suppose. It was taken from us when she was, and how could anyone expect her to heal? None of us got the chance. Jason went missing so soon afterward. I got my money from my father, saved up a few extra bucks doing random chores for my parents around the house as well. Work at the quarry just wasn't possible during the school year. But eventually, I indeed saved up enough money for my intentions, deceptive as they were. I had a responsibility to my friends and to myself. Seeing those toys the three of us used to play with reminded me of that innocence that I lost, and the duty that I had, not only to the siblings I came to love like family, but to myself. I had the means now to take matters into my own hands, whether my parents liked it or not, and even if they did find out that I disobeyed orders, at not driving out of state, and always letting them know where I was going, therefore revoking my driving privileges, it wouldn't last forever. At 16 years old, I had less than 2 years before I could move out on my own anyway. Their grip was loosening, and I was finally beginning to realize it. I'd be taking that trip over an hour away to go see Heather. Heather didn't speak or write or communicate in any form from what I understood, but her medical proxies, i.e., her parents, were kind enough to me and my parents to put us on the visitors list for her, in case we were ever able to make the trip. That Friday, I left my house, telling my mother and father goodbye for the day, and went for my vehicle in what they assumed to be me ready to drive to school. But I wasn't. I was instead driving someplace entirely different, confident they were none the wiser. When I finally arrived at the monolithic structure about 90 minutes later, gas money half gone, it was still pretty early morning. Visiting hours wouldn't be for another 25 minutes or so, but I made my way inside anyway, registering on the visitor's sheet, obtaining a sticky name tag for my shirt that told everyone that I was only visiting, and took a seat in the lobby, waiting to be told that visiting hours had begun. and I could finally see my friend that I hadn't seen in years. And yeah, maybe part of me was nervous, scared to face whatever shell of her former self that she had become, but my enthusiasm at the possibilities of seeing her and maybe a glint of happiness to her overshadowed that fear. I wish it wouldn't have. I was left completely unprepared and ill-equipped for the guilt such a meeting would bring. Standing in that entryway, the aperture that I'd been led to, and looking in through the now open doorframe, every word I had rehearsed, every action I envisioned myself taking, left me in one fleeting instant of total drain. The sight of her withered and frayed hair, the baggy and impersonalized monochromatic garb she wore, and her lack of even noticing that someone had come into the room behind her, left me with a picture worth well more than 1,000 words. This was my friend, the same girl I once knew and played games with. She looked disheveled, dismayed, and silently sullen. But somehow, also from the back and without even yet gazing upon her face, my sense of childhood wonderment had returned, even if only to surface for the most fractile of moments. She was beautiful, or at least that's how I saw her, and in that moment, I found a feeling within myself that I had not only forgotten was there, but had failed to even realize when I was younger. I loved her. I didn't know if it was that I loved the sight of her after so long, the idea of her when we were all still so young, or maybe there was something more. But I was immediately impassioned, and all the words I had rehearsed in my head and their absence instantly meant nothing. Now, an entirely unplanned set sat at the waiting, and I no longer had to think about speaking. "Heather? Heather, it's me, Trevor." I spoke softly yet confidently. The nurse who had accompanied me left the room, leaving a security guard just outside and down the hall to be paged with the intercom when I wanted to leave. "Heather, it's me. Do you remember me?" I repeated, still behind her, but moving to position myself kneeling on the floor right in front of her. Heather still said nothing, nor did she even look at me. "Heather, I'm here about Jason. I think you might be able to help me find out what happened to him. Can you tell me anything at all?" I asked the catatonic person in front of me anyway, even without any expression of sound to staple the notion of her responding upon. "Heather, you were gone for a long time. And, well, Jason's been gone longer. Is there any chance he could be alive? Please, Heather, tell me anything. I need to do something. I need to make this right." I started to get louder, more demanding and hopeful, but trailed off as I finished, knowing, believing that I'd wasted my trip, and that she wouldn't respond. I should have never moved away to that little red fucking farmhouse. I wish my parents never made us move. Maybe I could have found you sooner. Maybe we both could have spared whatever happened to Jason. I began speaking. And then, the most curious thing happened. Heather slowly averted her blank gaze and positioned her eyes to look right into mine. Then, her mouth began to open. I didn't know if what I had finally said to her got her to react for the first time in the better part of a decade, but I would find out almost instantly. I was almost there. So close to that house. Heather spoke softly, as if in some sort of dream state. Wait, what house? My house? The one I lived in New York? I asked further, needing more details. So close. But it was raining and dark. He found me, Heather said, gradually reaching an unseen breaking point on the topic, and began breaking down, crying, sobbing uncontrollably. I wanted to ask more. I needed to ask more. But at this reaction, the cameras in the room being on, and our interaction being observed, hospital staff instantly ran through the door and flooded the room. Before I knew what was going on, I was being pushed out the door by orderlies. Apparently, this was the breakthrough the staff was looking for, and likely wanted to ask me more about what I had to say, and what triggered this response. Unfortunately, I wouldn't get my chance, and would be forced to leave the grounds prematurely. Before I could do anything, or even try wrapping my head around all that had happened in such a short amount of time, I stepped outside to ponder all the information coursing through my head. I didn't resolve a single thought in that parking lot, because before I could, I spotted my car, and the person standing next to it. It was my father, and he was looking right at me. I was more confused and surprised to be unsettled by his presence, but it was clear as day that I was in deep trouble, and it was written all across his stern expression. Then he waved me over. "What the hell are you doing here? School, huh?" he questioned me as I closed the distance between us. "No, but I began, but was completely cut off. You know, your mother and I trust you. So how long has this been going on? Are you even going to school?" he asked, calling to question all his assumptions about my actions. "Yes, Dad. I only skipped today because I began again. Your reasons don't matter. If you had let us know, things might have been different," he proposed. But this time, I cut him off. "No, it wouldn't. You and Mom wouldn't let me go. You never have. What do you expect?" I threw back at him. "That's neither here nor there. You lied to us, Trevor. Get in that car and follow me home. We'll discuss this with your mother," my father demanded. "No, Dad, but no buts," he cut me short. "Get in that car now, or there'll be hell to pay," he finished, climbing into his work truck and waiting for me to follow behind him. I did as he asked. I got into my jalopy of a car, pulled out, and followed my father to the highway and back towards home. I wanted to tell him what had happened, that Heather had spoken, but I know it wouldn't have mattered, and would have given away too much. My parents did indeed ground me once I got home, and we had a long, lecture-like discussion that ended with my keys and driving privileges taken away. But, like I said, they could no longer stop me for long. My car came with 2 keys, and I made sure to always keep the spare stashed away, now more happy that I had that foresight than ever. I needed to get to that old farmhouse in New York. I had a feeling, pulling at my decisiveness, that whatever I was looking for, I would find it there. Sure, from what Heather said, the small amount that it was, there was no way to be sure that I was on the right path. But now, there was only one way to find out, and as soon as the opportunity arose, I would sneak out under the cover of darkness and pursue my own agenda, despite the demands of my parents. It was time to find out the truth. But one thing still bugged me. How did my father find me? And why was he at that institute in the first place? We keep things in the strangest places, including childhood memories, but don't dig too deep. You never know what you can find. But I know what you can find if you return here again next weekend, and that's more gore galore. But until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday. Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.